What is up guys, welcome back to another video, and in this video we're gonna create a full page responsive website with just HTML and CSS. Alright, so no JavaScript, just HTML and CSS. We're gonna build this website right here. So the site that we're gonna be building will look like this. So this is the top section of the site, and it has a logo and the navigation links. Alright, we have home, what we offer, about us, and contact us. Then we have a header, paragraph, and a button section right here, which tells what the site is about. The site is for digital marketing agencies, and this top section also has a background that fits the entire screen that you're seeing. Alright, so once you go down, we have what we offer section, because a digital marketing agency or a company offers a lot of services, and here we have different icons right here. We're going to use a site called Font Awesome in order to bring these icons. We have SEO, web design, email marketing, all this stuff right here. And then we have the About Us section with a little bit of text, and on the right side we have this image right here. Alright, and finally a small Contact Us section which just has email of a company. A real site would have a lot more than this, a contact form as well, but for the sake of simplicity I'm not going to do that, just a small section. Alright, and finally we have the footer. So this is what the site's gonna look like, and it's also going to be responsive, so even in smaller devices such as mobile, it's gonna look good. Alright, and for the code editor I'm going to use Visual Studio Code, but you can use anything that you want. Alright, so let's get started. Alright guys, so the first thing that we're going to do is create a simple folder. So let's go to new folder, and well, I'm going to name this folder website. And now let's go to our code editor. I'm using Visual Studio Code. If you're using Atom or Sublime, it's the same thing. Alright, what you want to do is go to the file and select open folder. And now the folder that I've created is in my desktop, which is this website, and I'm going to open that. Okay, so you have this website right here. Now what we're going to do is create two files. Alright, the first one is going to be index.html, and this is going to be the file where we'll code our HTML, and another one will be, you guys already know it, style.css. Right, and here we'll have our CSS. For right now we don't need the style.css right here. Now what I'm going to do is also create a folder here called image, and this folder will contain all the images that we'll be using in order to build this website. Alright, so we'll be using only two images, and I'm gonna add the two images inside this folder. What you want to do is, I have a link in my description below of the two images that I'll be using in this video. So just go to that link and download those files and add that inside this image folder. Alright, if you want to use your own images, feel free to do that as well. So I'm going to add those images. So I've actually copied those images, and what I'm going to do it is inside this this folder that we have created, website, we're going to go inside the image and just paste the two images. Once you go to your VS Code and open this image folder again, now you have these two images. Right, so you have the about.jpg and mainbg.jpg. Alright, so we're going to use this two image. Let's keep it like that for now, and let's start by creating our HTML first. And this is actually my way of doing it, but whenever I create a website or a web page, I first create the design of that page, whether it's in Photoshop or any other editor. Generally I use Photoshop, and after I've designed the web page, I build all the HTML first and then add the CSS later on. Okay, and that way it makes it a lot easier, and it also helps me to finish things fast. Let's start by creating the basic elements of HTML, which is doc type HTML, and I do hope that you guys know a little bit of HTML and CSS before coming to this video. Alright, you don't need to have a lot of knowledge of HTML and CSS, just a little bit will be enough. So after this we have the HTML tags, then we have the head, and then the body. Alright, now inside this head tag, what I'm going to do is create a title. Set the title of the website to digit X, because that is what is going to be the name of the company. Alright, so if you save that up, let's go to this website right here and let's open this up. Let's open this index. And now what you can see is nothing, because we haven't actually written anything in the body tag. That's why nothing is being shown here, but you can actually see the title has been changed to digit X. Alright, because we changed the title over here. Now I actually have an image of the website that we're going to be building, and it's right here. So this is actually the entire web page that we're going to be building. Now if you look at the top section, which is right here, let me zoom in a little bit. Alright, so if you just focus in this top section, don't worry about what we upper section. What we have is, we have this big image, right? And then we have this navigation bar. Well, it's invisible because I've not added any colors or something like that, but we do have this bar right here, which contains this logo and this navigation links. Right, then we have a section which contains this header, paragraph, and this button. Alright, so if you kind of break down this entire thing into small bits, what we have is this big section. Inside this section we have this navigation bar and this section right here. Alright, so that's how we're gonna break it down, alright, in our HTML. So I'll just minimize this for a bit. So in our body tag, what you're gonna do is create that top section first. Well, just the HTML, not the CSS, alright? So let me comment it out and say, by the way, this is how you can comment in your HTML, alright? And let me say top section, right? So let's create a div tag, and here I'm gonna set the class to top wrapper, and this div tag is going to be the main wrapper that's going to contain the entire top section. So inside that we will have a header tag. So if you guys don't know what is a header tag, it's basically a div tag, alright, just the name is changed to header so that it's much easier to distinguish when you code. So inside this header tag, what we're gonna have is the logo and the navigation link, right? So let's create our logo, and for the logo what we're gonna do is create an anchor tag. So a href equals to hash, and we're gonna set the class to logo. Close that up, and inside this we're gonna write digit X. Alright, so basically what we are doing is creating this portion right here, and this href is basically where do you want to take the user when he or she clicks this logo, but we're not going to take the user anywhere, so I've just added hash right here. Alright, so that's our logo, and if you actually look it up in your browser, if I actually, right now you're not seeing anything, but if you refresh it, you're gonna see this link right here. Again, we're not actually styling, we're just creating our HTML. Alright, now the next thing what we're gonna create is our navigation links. So say nav, and inside this we're gonna have list, and then li, and then we have a. Now whenever you create links for a website, the most common way of doing it is by creating an unordered list and adding all the links that are there in a website inside this list right here, and that way it makes it easier when you are actually adding CSS right later on. on. So the first link, that's going to be home, and right now I'm just going to use hash inside this href. Let's copy this li tag and paste it here 3 times because we're going to have 4 links. Alright, the second one is going to be what we offer. Then we have about us, and finally we have contact us. Right, so that is going to be our links. Let's check that out. Alright, let's comment here as well, saying navigation links. It's a good practice to comment. So basically we have created this section right here, and now we're going to have a showcase section. Let's create a tag called section. You can actually use a div tag instead of the section, div instead of this header, or a div tag instead of this nav. It's the same thing. Alright, the reason why I write section, header and nav is because later on when I look at this website, look at this code again, it helps me distinguish, alright, different sections, and it makes it less confusing. That's why I write header to header, section, nav, etc. But you can, instead of this, you can write div. There's no harm in doing that. So here I'm going to add a class of showcase container, and inside that we will have an h1 tag, creative solution for your business. Alright, and then we have a p tag that says we are a digital marketing agency located in Darjeeling. Alright, finally we will have a button, and you can actually write butto and button tag. You can actually use that, but I'm going to use an anchor tag and href for the time being. I'm just going to insert hash. Later on I'm going to change it. Alright, and here what I'm going to write is what we offer. Alright, and let's save that, and we have actually built the HTML for this section right here. Okay, there we go. Alright, so the top section is now done. Let's move on to the next section, which is what we offer section. Alright, this entire thing. What we offer. Alright, so let's start by creating our section tag. This is gonna be the wrapper, and for the class I'm gonna say what we offer. Alright, we're gonna need an h1 tag that says what we offer. Alright, and here if you actually kind of focus in this section, the way we're gonna break down this section is like this. We're gonna have a div that encloses everything right here, that covers everything except for this what we offer, a div that covers everything. Alright, and inside that div we're gonna have 6 sections. Alright, 1 2 3 4 5 6 sections, and each of section will have this icon, this header, and this paragraph. Okay, so we have the entire wrapper div. Inside that div we have 6 sections, and each of the section will have these 3 things. Okay, so that's how we're going to break down this right here into our HTML. So let's come here and let's create the div tag, and basically this is going to be the wrapper div, and let's also add a class of service container. Right, something like that. As I said earlier, we're going to have 6 div tags again. So div of class, let's set that to service. The reason I'm adding these classes is because later on I will need this class in order to build the CSS. Alright, let's close that div. Alright, so inside this service div we're gonna have icon, a header, and a paragraph. But for the icons we're gonna use font awesome, so we're gonna do that later on. So right now we're not gonna add icons, we're just gonna add the header and the paragraph. Alright, so let's add. Now instead of h1 we're gonna use h3 here, and the first service is gonna be SEO, which stands for search engine optimization. Most of the digital marketing agencies provide that service. Alright, and in our p tag what we're gonna do is you can write any text that you want, but I'm gonna use lorem ipsum. Now if you guys don't know what lorem ipsum is, it is basically a dummy text, and that's all there is. Okay, if you want to use a dummy text in your while creating a web page, designing a web page, you use lorem ipsum. And if you actually go to lorem ipsum right here, you have the dummy text generator, and if you say you need 5 paragraphs, and if you generate the dummy text, you'll have those text right here. What I'll do is copy this much and paste it right here. Alright, instead of doing that, if you're in a Visual Studio Code or even in Atom, you can actually do lorem and then hit tab, and that dummy text will come right here. Now let's copy this because we need 6 services in total, and let's paste that up here 5 times. The second one is going to be web design, email marketing. Alright, let me quickly change the headers. Okay, so we have the SEO, web design, email marketing, content marketing, social media, and the mobile app. Alright, and for the icons we're going to put that later on. So let's look at our site. Okay, so what we offer section is pretty much done. Now let's move on to about us section. Let's create a section tag, and let's add the class of about us. Now if you look at the about us section, we have basically 2 sections right here. Alright, this is the first one, which contains this header and some text, and the second one is this image. Alright, so first let's create the first one, which is this right here. So we're gonna add a div tag and set the class to about content wrapper, and inside that I'm gonna have an h1 and say about us, and then we have a p tag, and we're gonna add lorem ipsum again. What I'm gonna do is copy this up and use that here again. Okay, so this right here, from this div tag to here, is this section. Right, now we'll create this right here. It's very simple. All you need is a div tag and set the class to image container. Alright, and that's it. You don't even need to add the image tag, alright, because what you're going to do is, with the help of CSS, we're going to add the image with the help of the background property. So that's it for the about section. Now for the contact section, which is pretty much simple. All you need is a section tag, and let's add the class to contact. Inside that, we're going to have an h1 tag that says contact us, and then we'll have a p tag which will have the contact email of the company, alright, which is digitx@gmail.com, and this is a fake one, alright. And finally we have the footer. So for the footer, you have the footer tag, alright, just like for the header you had the header tag, for the footer you have the footer tag. And inside that, we're gonna write ampersand copy and the semicolon, and what this does is creates that copyright sign, alright. If you don't know what that is, let's just save that up and refresh this browser. This sign right here, alright, it's actually created by this ampersand copy, and we're gonna write digit x 2021 all rights reserved. And that's it, guys. That is the HTML that we need for our website. Well, we're gonna add a little bit of things later on, but for now this is it. So if you refresh it, there you go, we have our beautiful website. Alright, so the HTML is more or less done. Now let's move on to CSS and styling the website. So right now we don't have anything right here. First, what you're going to do is connect this style.css with our HTML. Alright, so for that, what you're going to need to do is inside our head tag, we need to add a link tag that will have a rel attribute which will say style sheet, and it will also have an href attribute, and here we need to we need to locate our style.css file. Now since our CSS file is in the same folder where index.html file is, we just need to add style.css. Alright, if it's in a different folder, you need to specify the location. There you go. And in our style.css, what I'm going to do is select the universal selector, and what this does is whatever property I write here, it's going to apply to the entire site. So if I say background color set to red, save that. If I refresh this, and the background color is red, alright, so it get applied to the entire website. So here what I'm going to add is, if you look at our site, these elements, okay, whatever there is, some of them come up with their own margin and padding. Alright, for example, this unordered list has some padding right here. Alright, margin or padding, it also has right here and right here. Okay, similar with the h1 tags or the paragraph tags, they have some padding and margin. What we need to do is remove those, because we will be adding that by our own. Alright, so what I will do here is set the margin to 0 and padding also to 0. Okay, let's save that. Let's look at the site, and there you go. Now it doesn't have any margin or padding. Now the third property I'll be adding is box sizing, and let's set that to border box. Alright, now what this does is that if you add a width, alright, if you add a width to an HTML element, it will maintain its width even if you add margin or padding. Alright, if you set the box sizing to border box, the HTML elements will maintain its size. Okay, so now I think it's the right time to actually change our font, because I'm not going to go with this font. I think this is Times New Roman. I'm going to use a separate font. Alright, for that I'm going to go to Google Fonts, and I'm gonna search for Poppins. This is the font that I'm gonna be using, so let's click here. And there are lots of styles that you can choose. Alright, you can choose multiple styles as well. Basically this 300, this 400, this is basically the weight of the font. Okay, you have a font weight property in CSS, and there you can actually add these numbers in order to represent the thickness of the font. Okay, so for our site I'm going to use regular, which is 400. I'll also need a semi-bold and finally bold, these three. Right, now if you look at the bottom, you actually have a link tag right here. Okay, this is what you need in order to get this font. Alright, what you're going to do is copy this link right here, and in our HTML, inside our head tag, I'm going to comment Google Fonts and paste that here. Now you can use this font in your site. What I'm going to do in my style.css is set the font family to Poppins. Alright, and if you look at the site, there we go. The font is now changed. I'm also going to set the default color of the text to 222. Now what we're going to do is start styling our top section. Right, so alright, so let's start with the top wrapper right here. If you look at our site, we have this image right here, right? And now we will add this image. Okay, so let's select the top wrapper in our CSS. For selecting the class, you add a dot. Alright, so top wrapper, and inside here what I'm going to do is add that image. So here what I'm going to do is use the background image property. Alright, so background image URL quotes, and inside these quotes we need to locate the image that we'll be adding. Right, so it's inside the image folder. Main BG is the image that we're inserting. Save that, and there you go, our image is being loaded. What I want for this image is to take the entire screen that we're seeing right now. Alright, so this image is basically covering the area that our top wrapper section is covering. Alright, because it's basically the background image. So what we need to do is increase the height of the top wrapper from here till here. Alright, and the way you do that is by using a viewport height or a VH unit. So what I'm going to do is set the height to 100 VH. Save that. Now instead of pixels or percentage or inches, I'm using VH. Alright, VH means viewport height. So 100 viewport height is the entire screen that you are seeing. Now if you refresh it, there we go. Now I'm going to use few other background properties, that is background size, and set that to cover, and also background position, and set that to center. Right, and what will happen is the image will automatically fit to the screen. Before I added background size cover and background position center, the image was actually zoomed in. Right, after I added those properties, the image is not so zoomed in, and actually it fits perfectly. Now I also need to darken this image. However, you don't have a background darken property or something like that. Alright, what you could do is use a filter property and set the brightness to like 50%. But what happens is, if you actually refresh it, although the image gets darkened, but the text here also gets darkened. Alright, and the reason is because when you're using the brightness property to the top wrapper, and you know it is wrapping the entire top section, right? So what if it gets dark, then obviously the contents that are inside this wrapper div also gets darkened. So what we want is this image to get dark, but we don't want the contents to be dark. Okay, we just want the image to be dark. So there are lots of ways how you can accomplish that. The way that I would do is by using a linear gradient property. Let me show you. We just need to remove this, and instead of adding a background image URL, what I'm going to do is cut this. We're not going to use background image. What we're going to use is a background property, and it will be linear gradient, and inside the brackets we will have a RGBA value, and inside that RGBA we will write 0 0 0, and for the fourth one we will add 0.7. We're going to do the same thing again, RGBA 0 0 0 0.7, and then we're going to add a comma, and then we're going to use URL. And once you save that, refresh it. Now you can see that the image is darker, but it is not applied to our text. It still has that font color of 222. Okay, so what I basically did was used a linear gradient property. Alright, so linear gradient property basically gives you a gradient. Alright, here I added the same values, meaning that there won't be any gradient. Instead it will be a black color, because I've set the red, green and blue color value to 0 0 0, which will give me a black color. And the fourth one is for transparency. Alright, meaning instead of 0.7, if I add 0 here, let's do that, and if I save it, what you'll see is that there is no darkness. Alright, the transparency of the gradient is 0, and if I do 1 instead of 0, it means that the transparency of that gradient is full. Alright, so what I did was just added somewhere in between 0.7, and here do the same thing, 0.7, save that, and there you go. Alright, so this is basically a simple trick where you would want to darken the background but not the content inside of it. Okay, alright, so next thing is I want this header to come down a bit. So let's select the header tag and add a padding top of, let's say 20 pixels. Now let's style the logo. Right, let's set the text declaration to none. What this will do is remove that underline. Let's also set the color to white. Font size 30 pixels, and font weight to 700, which is bold. Right, let's also style the navigation links. Right, so nav UL. Now instead of selecting like this, you can select like this as well. Alright, it does the same thing. The reason why I use the parent tag is because it helps reading the code much easier. We're gonna set the list style type to none, and what this will do is remove those dots from this list. Alright, and then we're gonna select nav ul li. Now this means that we are selecting the li tag, and we're gonna add a padding left of 50 pixels, and also padding top of 10 pixels. Finally, I'm gonna select the link, which is the anchor tag, and set the text decoration to none. Color, I'm going to use FFF. I'm also going to set the font size to 18 pixels, and also going to add the CSS for the hover effect. Alright, so when you hover onto this anchor tag, I am just going to change its color. Alright, the color of the tag to hash 5297FC. Alright, it gives a kind of like blue, dark blue color, which is actually the main theme of our website. Alright, and also let's add a transition of 0.2 seconds. Right, so let's check that out. There you go. Now what I would want to do is put this entire section here, and I also want to align this horizontally and not vertically. Again, there are a lot of ways how you can achieve this. For me, the easiest one is by using a flex property. So let's go a little up, and here let's add a dot flex class. I've not added this class anywhere, I'm gonna add it later on, but here let's just change the display property to flex. Alright, and in our index.html file, let's add that class in our UL tag, because UL is the parent. Okay, these 4 li tags are basically these 4 right here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to the parent element, and we're gonna add a class of flex, and this flex is nothing but this right here. Okay, that has a property of display flex. And now what this does is, if you refresh it, alright, it aligns horizontally. So you need to add that property on the parent element and not the child. And in order to bring this right here, we're gonna do the same thing here as well. Okay, we're gonna go to the parent element, which is this header right here. Okay, because this header contains this logo and this nav. Alright, so what I'm going to do is add a class here called flex. Save that, and if you refresh it, there you go. Now they are both perfectly aligned. However, this link is still on the left hand side, it's not on the far right of the screen. I would want this to go to the far right of the screen. So what I'm going to do is add another property. Okay, so let's add a class right here called space between. Right, and here what I'm going to do is say dot space between, and I'm going to add a property called justify content space between. Alright, and what this does is creates space in between, pushing the two elements far away. And for this to work, you need to have the flex property as well. Okay, now Flexbox is a vast subject inside CSS, but this is the basic of it. Alright, that is, if you want to align the two items together, all you have to do is add the flex property on the parent. And if you want to create a space in between those elements, all you need to add is a justify content property in the parent as well. Although they are aligned together, but they are still at the far end of the screen. Okay, I do want this to come a little bit here, and here this to come a little bit here. For that I can use margin property, but what I'm going to do is use a container. Okay, so here let me add a div of a class called container, and let's close that div here. And in our style.css, we're going to style the container. We're going to set the width to 90%, and the margin to auto so that it comes to the center. And if you refresh it, alright, so now this is breaking down. I guess that's because the container should not be here, it should be here. The reason is broke down is because the container became the child element of this header. That's why the flex and the space between didn't work. Okay, so let's also cut that and bring that here. Alright, now it is going to work. There you go. Now we have a little bit of space here and space here as well. Okay, so that is the role of the container class. Now another thing to notice is that this X here is blue in our main site, right? So we need to make that blue as well. So what I'm going to do is in our index.html here, I'm going to use a span tag. Now the reason why I'm using span tag is because it is an inline element, so the X will not go down. Okay, if I were to use a p tag instead of span tag, the X will come down, but I don't want that, so I'm using the span tag. And I am gonna give a class of blue text, and here let's set the blue text and add a color of hash 3079E6. Save that. Alright, and there I have a span. I guess I did something wrong. Yep, I did it here. Okay, so our navigation bar is done. Now let's start styling this showcase section. Right, let me also comment here. This is how we comment in CSS. It's gonna be top section. There you go. And now what we're gonna do is start styling show case section. All right. So we have this showcase container here. Let's take this. Yep. So I'm gonna select that showcase container, and here I'm gonna add a text align property of center. What this is gonna do is bring everything to the center, and also add a padding top 10%. Then I'm going to select showcase container h1 tag. Alright, and I'm going to set its font size to 60 pixels, and also change the color to white. I'm going to select showcase container P. Again, as I said earlier, these are actually the ways of selecting elements. Right, instead of showcase container space P, you can do this as well, right? But what happens is that when you use P and then add our properties here, what happens is that it will be applied to every P tag that is there in our HTML. All right, but we don't want that. We just want these properties in our this P tag, okay, that is inside our showcase container. That's why I'm using dot showcase container space P. All right, because I don't want these properties to be applied to every P tag, just the P tag that is inside the showcase container. So that's why I'm adding showcase container space P. Okay, forgot to add O. There you go. Now for the color, I'm still gonna use FFF, which is white. For the font size, 20 pixels would be okay. I'm gonna separate the distance of H1 and P a little bit, so padding top of 10 pixels. Now finally, for the button part, alright, this what we offer right here, we need to make it like this. So we have showcase container space A. Now an anchor tag is an inline element, alright, and one property about inline element is that if an element is inline, you can't add margin or padding, it won't work. So what we need to do is change this inline element into inline block element, right? So for that we have display property to inline block. Okay, now what this will do is that you will be able to add padding and margin to an inline element. Okay, text decoration will be none. I also want a background color, which will be 3F85EC. Then I'll need a padding of 15 pixels top and bottom and 40 pixels left and right. Okay, and then I want the border radius of 5 pixels because I don't want sharp edges. Set the font size to 18 pixels, font weight to 600, color of the font to be white, and I also want this button to have a distance from the P tag, so margin top of 30 pixels, and finally transition of 0.5 seconds. Alright, now for the hover part, we need showcase container A colon hover, and when I hover onto this button, I want the background color to be white and the font color to be #3F85EC. Alright, let's save that up, and now let's look at our site. There you go. Right, and when you hover onto it, you have that white background and the blue text. Now in our real site, the solution part is blue, just like in our logo. So what I'm going to do is do the same thing that we did with our logo, okay, which is enclose this inside a span tag and change the class to blue text. Save that up, and there you go guys, the first section is done. I think I need to bring this down a little bit, so here let me go to showcase container padding top. Let's change that to 12%. Okay, now our top section is done. Now let's move on to what we offer section. Right, so what we offer. So in our HTML we have this class what we offer right here. This element wraps up the entire what we offer section. So if you look at our website, this is actually just below this image. Alright, we need to add some space in between. So what you're gonna do is what we offer, set the margin top to 80 pixels. Okay, and then let's style this h1 tag as well. So dot what we offer h1, set the font size to 35 pixels, and let's align the text to center. So text align center. Alright, again in our site this part is blue, so in our index.html, I hope you know the drill. Span class of blue text, and this is actually the benefit of class, is that you can use it again and again. And if you refresh it, there we have our blue text. Now what I'm going to do is start styling this section, service container. So dot what we offer dot service container. Let's set the padding top of 50 pixels because I don't want to have a space between the text and the service container. Alright, now let's select what we offer dot service, right, which is basically all the 6 services, and I'm gonna set the padding to 20 pixels and text align center. Let's also style the header and the paragraph. Dot what we offer dot service h3, set padding top of 30 pixels, and let's also set the font size to 20 pixels. Okay, let's do the same thing for the paragraph tag, and here I'm gonna set the padding top to 15, and I'm also going to change the line height to 1.9. right, line height is the vertical distance between those texts. So if you save that, now although they are aligned to the center, I don't want to show it like this. Instead I want to show it like this, the 6 section aligned together in a 3x3 format. Now if I were to use a Flexbox, because this service, all this service are the child component of the service container, right? So if I add a class of flex here and save it, what happens is that if you refresh it, all the 6 services will be aligned together in a row. But I don't want this, I want it in a 3x3 format. So instead of flex, what we're going to use is a property called grid. Alright, now you might say that the grid is kind of like a senior version of flex, but basically what we're going to do is add dot grid and set the display property to grid. Now when you are actually specifying a grid, you also need to set the number of columns that you want. Alright, so for that we have a property called grid. Since, as I said earlier, we need 3 columns, so I'm going to use auto 3 times. Right, save that, and here instead of flex, what I'm going to use is grid. Okay, save that, and if you refresh it, and there you go, 6 of them aligned together in a 3x3 format. What I did was just added a display grid property and then specified the column with the help of grid template columns property. Alright, now still I think that there needs to be space here and here as well, because they are going to the far end of the screen. So what I'm going to do is here add a div of class container. Remember that we had created the container class, right? I'm just enclosing everything inside that. So let's close that here, and let me bring everything. Okay, save that, and if you refresh it, there you go, you have a little bit of space. Now the only thing left is the icons right here. Okay, and for the icons we'll be using Font Awesome for that. So let's go to Font Awesome. If you're using Font Awesome for the first time, you need to sign up here and create your something called a kit. Okay, it's very simple. Okay, you just need to follow the procedures and you'll be able to do that. I already have an account, so I'm gonna go to my account right here, and I have something called kits. Okay, let's go there, and basically if you're using a free version, Font Awesome only lets you use a single kit, but that itself is enough. All you want is that link. So if you go here, you have this script code right here. Let's copy that, and in our HTML inside this head, I'm going to comment Font Awesome, and I'm going to paste it here. Alright, now you can use those icons in your project as well. Now here, if you search something like, you know, mail, you can search a lot of icons. You'll get these icons. The darker ones are free to use. The non-darker ones are the pro version. That means you need to pay in order to use this, right? But the free version itself is good enough. You can actually search here a lot of icons and play around with it. Okay, if you want to copy that, all you need to do is click here, and then you have this I tag right here. Okay, all you need to do is click it and it gets copied, and in your HTML you can just paste it here. Okay, but I already have selected the icons that I'm going to use, so I'm just gonna add it here. So here I'm going to use I class FAS FA search. Alright, copy this, paste that here. If a laptop code, envelope, pen, FA Facebook, because this is social media, and for mobile app I'm gonna use mobile alt. Save that up, and if you actually see in your website, this will take a little bit of time, but all the icons will be loaded. Instead of this Facebook, where did I go wrong? Instead of FAS, this one will be FAB. Okay, so let's style these icons as well. So let me go to CSS, and here I'm going to do the same thing, that is what we offer dot service and I. Right, because this I tag is basically the icon which is inside the service. Now in order to increase the size of these icons, you don't need to use the height and width property. All you need to do is, since these are basically fonts, and you can increase its size with the help of font size property. So font size 50 pixels, and let's set the color to #3079E6. Alright, and that is it, guys. Let's refresh the page, and there you go. Alright, so now let's move on to the About Us section. What we offer is done. We have this class of About Us. We're gonna select that, and because we need some spacings right here, okay, dot About Us. We need a margin top of 100 pixels, and that will give us some white space. So inside this About Us section, we have two big sections. Alright, one is this About Content Wrapper, and the second one is the image container. So let's first style with About Content Wrapper. So let's go here and say dot About Us dot About Content Wrapper. Okay, the first things first, we need to set its width to 50%, and also background color to #DDD. Okay, it's a little bit of gray color. Let's also style the h1 and the p tags. All right, so dot About Us dot About Content Wrapper h1, I guess. Font size, let's set that to 35 pixels. Let's also set the padding top of 40 pixels because I do want to have a little bit of space from the top. Now for the paragraph tags, About Us, About Content Wrapper, which is right here, and then B. So I'm going to set the padding for top and bottom 30 pixels, for left and right. I'm just going to add 0 and set the line height to 1.9. Okay, let's check that out. There you have it. Let's also add a contain, include this About Us and the paragraph inside the container in order to give the spacings on the far ends. Alright, so in our index.html we have About Content Wrapper. Okay, inside this, what I'm going to do is add a div of class container. So close that here. Alright, save that up. Let's refresh it again, and there you go. We have some spacings on the ends. Now again, this should be blue, so here span class blue text. Alright, there you go. Now the next one is image container. So About Us dot image container. For the image container as well, I'm going to set the width to 50%. Okay, for the background image, I'm gonna set the URL and specify and locate the image itself, which is /img and about.jpg. For the background position, it's gonna be center, and for the background size, cover. Alright, save that. And if you go and refresh that up, and it is still not showing, that is because this image container is actually below this section right here, okay, and not on the side of the section. If you actually inspect this, you have this section right here, okay, and it has about content wrapper, which is this. And if you look at the image container, there it is showing image div.image container 469 into 0, which means that the height is still 0. That is because the image container is below about us and we have not specified the height, and we will not, because what you're going to do is bring the image on the side and not below about us. For that, what you're going to do is in the about us here, because this is the parent of this about content wrapper and image container, flex, and now if you refresh this, there you go, you have the image on the right hand side. Okay, once we added the flex property, this section and this section got aligned horizontally. Okay, so the about us section is now done. Now let's move on to the context section. Now there's not much in the context section, so here let's say contact us. So here the class of dot contact, and here I'm gonna add a padding of 20 pixels. Set the background color to #555. This will give me a not black but a little bit lighter than black, and I do want the text to come to the center, this text right here. So I'm gonna say text align to center. So if you refresh that, alright, finally let's set the color to FFF, and let's go to index.html, and here let's create the span tag and add a class of blue text, right, because us is going to be blue in color. And if you refresh that, okay, so the text color is not changing. Oh yeah, I need to, the color property should not be added here. Instead, the color property should be added here. Context h1 color #ff. Okay, if you add a color property here, then it won't take effect. You need to specifically select this h1 tag and change the color. And let's set the font size to 35 pixels. Now if I see it again, there you go, now the color is changed to white. I'm going to do the same thing for the paragraph as well. Instead of h1, this one is going to be p. Now I'm going to add a padding top of, I guess, let's see, 10 pixels would be enough, and then set the color to FFF, which is white. And that is it for the context section. Alright, now finally the footer section is left. Let's let's say footer, and we actually have the footer tag for the footer section, right? It's right here. So I'm gonna select that footer, this one, footer, and set the background color to #333, which is a little bit darker than the context section, and align the text to center, and finally we're gonna select this p tag also. So footer p, and here I'm gonna set the padding top and bottom 10 pixels, and left and right it's gonna be 0, color to white, and finally font size to 14 pixels. Alright, if you save that and refresh it, and there you go, we have the footer as well. So okay, for the full screen mode, I guess this is it. So we actually finally finished building our simple web page. Now what I need to do is, right now when I click on this link, nothing's gonna happen. Alright, so I need to make this link work. Okay, so how are we gonna do that? Let's just go to our HTML page, and in each of the section let's create an ID. I hope you guys know what ID is. Alright, it's similar to classes, but ID is used for specific purposes. So ID, let's say top. In what we offer, let's also add an ID, and let's say service. Let's also go up and change this T to capital. Here let's change the ID to about, and finally here change the ID to contact. Alright, so after you have created IDs for each of the sections, what I want to do is here in our menu section, instead of this hash, I'm going to write #top. Instead of this hash, I'm going to write #service, okay, because that is my ID in the service section. Similarly, I'm going to say about and contact. Alright, if I refresh now, if I go to what we offer, it takes me to this section. If I go to about us, it's taking me here. Alright, now I don't want the site to directly take me here. Instead, I want to show a little bit of the smooth scrolling effect. So for that, let me go to CSS, and here in our universal selector, let's add a property of scroll behavior to smooth. Right, now this will actually give me the smooth scrolling effect. Right, if I refresh it and if I go to what we offer, as you can see, it is giving me that smooth scrolling effect. Alright, if we go to contact us, it will take you to contact us as well. Now I also want this button to work. So in my index.html, let's go right here and change this to service. Refresh it, and there you go. Okay, so the desktop version of this website is complete, guys. If you have made it through, great job. Now what we're going to do is make it responsive. Alright, now you don't need to start everything from scratch when it comes to responsive, because most of the things are already created. All you need to do is adjust a little bit here and there, and it will be done. Okay. Alright, now for the responsive part, we're gonna need to set the media query first. Alright, so let me go down here and say responsive Now what we need to do is type @media screen and inside our open brackets we're going to say max width to 600 pixels. Alright, so what this means is that when the size of the screen is below 600 pixels, when the width of the screen is below 600 pixels, then whatever code that you're gonna write inside this will be applied. Okay, the first thing I'm gonna do is select flex and grid, and I'm going to change the property that is display to block. Alright, and as soon as you do that, and if you refresh this, you're going to see that everything comes down. Alright, now let's style the logo, set the display property to block, text align center, and what this will do is bring this logo to the center. And finally, let's also add a padding bottom of 10 pixels. There you go. Now in our navigation part, if I go to I guess here, I've given a padding left of 50 pixels. Alright, that's why it's not at the left corner, it's a little bit away from the corner. Okay, that's because of this padding left property. So what I'm going to do now is select that, so nav ul li, sorry, not nav, it's going to be nav, and I'm going to set the padding of top and bottom to 5 pixels and left and right to be 0. Okay, there you go. Let's also select nav ul li a, which is these links, and we're going to set the display property to block and text align to center. And what this will do is it will bring all this in the center. So there you go. Now let me also select the showcase container, and I'm going to set the padding top to 5% for mobile, and let's select showcase container h1 and set the font size to 40. Let me also change the size of the paragraph, so showcase container b, and let's set the font size to 20 pixels and line height to 1.9. I'm going to set the padding top to 8. I think that will be okay. Alright, this section has a width, this about us, this section has a width of 50%, so I'm going to change that to 100. So it's this about content wrapper right here. Bring it down, and I'm going to change the width to 100%. Refresh that. There you go. And finally, the image, which is actually not showing here, I think it's image container, about us image container. The reason it's not showing in our site right now is because of its height, which is 0. So what I'm gonna do is set the width to 100% and height to, let's say, 500 pixels. Right now, if you refresh it, as you can see, you'll see that image right here. Okay, so yes, actually this is it for the mobile section. All right, we have made it responsive, and for the desktop, this is how it looks. All right, and the links are also working. So yeah guys, I think that's it for this video. We have made a fully responsive web page with just HTML and CSS. If you guys are here with me till now, you guys did a great job. If it's your first building web pages, then it's a great work that you have done. And I think guys, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching it till the end. If you have learned something from it, if you enjoyed this video, do like, share and subscribe to my channel. Do comment out in the comment section as well, and I hope to see you in the next one.